Can I beat every gym leader in Pokémon Heart Gold using the previous gym leader's Pokémon? While the Johto remakes are often considered among the best Pokémon games, the Johto leaders are not. So to truly put them to the test, after defeating one of them, I will take their team and use those Pokémon exclusively until defeating the next gym leader. Can I make it through Johto like this? I start by naming myself Duplica.
Duplica! From the House of Imite.
Though I won't use him for very long, I pick Cyndaquil, the best Johto starter. And you can fight me on that. A bunch of unimportant story stuff happens, including defeating this thief who stole Elm's Pokémon. Stealing is not okay, kids. So let's jump ahead to the important stuff here and battle with Falkner. For this fight, I have decided to match his team size and level to make things more of a challenge. I start with Cyndaquil, who defeats the first Kanto bird with 2 embers. For the second near identical Kanto bird, see what I mean about these lame gym leaders? I bring out the Ghastly I caught in Sprout Tower. He just so happens to know Curse. And even though this isn't a Nuzlocke, old habits die hard, and I don't want to sack this awesome ghost. Between that Curse, a few embers, and a burn, that bird is quickly defeated. With how easily those birds fell, I'm not really looking forward to using them exclusively, but it's too late to back out now. Just like Falkner got them from his father, I get these birds from him. It's basically like the circle of life. And in case it wasn't clear, I'm not using items in battle, and this game is on set mode. Now to actually get these gym leader Pokemon, I simply jump into PK Hex and create them out of thin air with random natures, random stats, and the same moves they just had. To make this more interesting, I have decided to not change their moves at all, so I'm stuck with whatever nonsense these stupid gym leaders taught them. I run around in front of that loser's gym to give him one last view of his Pokemon before running away. And before you ask, I'm not stealing them, I won them fair and square in a Pokemon battle. That's how it works, right? Inside Union Cave, I run into a hiker, which is somewhat concerning since his rocks are a good counter to my birds. But I either underestimated Falkner's flyers or these Geodudes just suck, because I win without even getting hit. Inside a well, I defeat Team Rocket without any real trouble, so let's take on Bugsy. I also decide to mimic the gym leader's team levels, so only my ace can be at the level cap. Little Pidgey takes a leer and manages to throw up some sand twice before succumbing to Scyther, which is a 500 base stat Pokemon in the second gym. That's pretty unfair, if you ask me. Pidgeotto may have the type advantage, but in a much more real sense, is at a huge disadvantage because she's fighting a Scyther. Basically, I'm relying on luck and Scyther missing at just the right times. I try to stay healthy with Roost and Shellbell while he uses super potions. There are several times Pidgeotto just barely survives, and in the end, I end up winning with 10 HP left. Sweet. Now this fight is in the bag. 2 Roosts, followed by 2 Gusts, defeats Metapod. Kakuna actually poisons me, but it's too little, too late. I didn't actually expect to win on the first try with that super lame strategy, but I'll take it. And I take Bugsy's Pokemon too. I'm super excited to use Scyther here. Let's drop those loser birds into the box, never to see the light of day again. I try to leave Azalea Town, but I'm accosted by Boy, the thief who abuses his Pokemon, in stark contrast to myself. His team is quite concerning. Scyther uses 2 leers on Ghastly and U-turns, which still fails to one-shot, so I swap back to him to finish the job. Kakuna's Poison Sting is absolutely pathetic, and she can't even poison Croconaw. What a waste of a Pokemon. Scyther U-turns to bring out Metapod, who also really sucks, and almost immediately falls. Now that Scyther is the only one left, he can U without the turn for the knockout. Zubat quad resist Bug, so 2 relatively fast attacks is the best option. For my first battle using Bugsy's Pokemon, things did not go well. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. That way, you can see more unique and, let's be honest, pointless ways to play Pokemon like what I'm doing here. In the next random trainer battle, I find a Pokemon that Kakuna can actually face off against. A level 9 Hoppip. You must be so proud of your Kakuna, Bugsy, though you should have evolved her 5 levels ago. Great job with her training. With a bit more training, we are ready to fight Whitney. Or maybe not ready, but we're forced to anyway. Scyther starts with a Focus Energy, and is promptly crit and double slapped 5 freaking times. Great start here. Even with a crit, Quick Attack fails to defeat Clefairy, who then heals and forces Scyther to fall in love. This is not going well, and I haven't even gotten to her Demon Cow yet. After a few turns, Scyther finally defeats Clefairy, but at this HP, I doubt he'll survive much longer. U-turn is relatively weak, it doesn't even crit, and I have to sacrifice Metapod on the altar that is Miltank, hitting with a single tackle. Kakuna actually survives a hit and poisons the Miltank, who immediately heals it. Of course she does. Back to Scyther, rollout misses, which means I might actually be able to do it. Milk Drink keeps this cow alive for a while, who then attracts. And at this point, it's all over. Scyther is unable to resist that cow's feminine wiles, he refuses to attack twice in a row, and falls to a rollout. Well, this is my first loss. Let's regroup and try again with a brand new strategy. This time, my plan is to not lose. That's where we went wrong last time. Clefairy obliges me, getting a weak metronome signal beam and falling in a few quick attacks. Now Scyther can survive the first turn of rollout, so I stay in to use Leer, and then hope that Focus Energy gives me a crit, which of course it doesn't because that would have been too easy. Both Metapod and Kakuna are sacrifices to try and break this cow out of her rollout. It doesn't work. Just when all hope is lost, Scyther comes in clutch with a U-turn crit that may or may not have been necessary, but it was greatly appreciated. After this victory, it makes sense that Whitney is crying because she has to give me her Pokemon. And Miltank seems to like me more anyway, enjoying our leisurely stroll through downtown. Let's see how you like this cow being rubbed in your face, Whitney. After that brief revenge, I encounter Generic Boy once again in the burned down tower. But my scrappy Miltank can stomp on his ghost. She is paralyzed by the Magnemite, who actually manages to defeat Clefairy, but it's not enough because Miltank is a freaking milk drinking fiend. She defeats the rest of Boy's Pokemon, though it was closer than I had anticipated. Now, the Ghost Leader Morty might have been an issue if Whitney's Miltank had thick fat instead of scrappy, but she doesn't. So a Silk Scarf Stomp is literally all that she needs. Being immune to Shadow Ball and other ghost moves doesn't hurt either. So yeah, that was easy. Morty's Gengar is happy to be traveling with me instead of being stuck with that self-obsessed loser who can't even have the one new ghost Pokemon from Johto. I mean, come on, there's only one to choose from. In order to get more than 5 seconds with these awesome ghost Pokemon, I take them to the Lake of Rage to complete this Team Rocket stuff. And Gyarados straight up kills my Gengar. What the heck, man? I was being nice to you and everything. Since this isn't a Nuzlocke, deaths aren't really that big a deal, but I don't make a habit of having revives anymore, because I basically only do Nuzlockes, which means on my way back to Mahogany Town, before I can heal my Gengar, I encounter a fisherman with a normal Gyarados. I am in a pretty bad position here, because he gets me down to my last Haunter before succumbing to curses. So I almost had another loss to some random fisherman, who has 2 completely useless Pokemon. That would have sucked. Using my ghosts, the rocket hideout is a simple enough matter, as is climbing the light tower. The need for some medicine takes me to Chuck and his fighting Pokemon. I start with Ghastly, who's basically only used to curse the Primeape. I do a bunch of swapping, trying to get Primeape to fall with a specific Haunter out, but it ends up not working. Okay, it's time to sack Ghastly to bring out Gengar. She misses 2 Shadow Balls in a row because Primeape has been using Double Team, and gets Rock Slid twice before finally getting the hit. And here I thought this gym battle was going to be simple. But maybe I spoke too soon, because Poliwrath fails to put Gengar to sleep twice, gets his special defense lowered, and then dies. Alright, not the best showing for these awesome Gen 1 ghosts, but it is what it is. Now, admittedly, I just kind of assumed that the fighting gym would easily defeat Jasmine and her steel types. The thing is, the only fighting move they have is Focus Punch, one of my least favorite moves of all time. Basically, it sucks. So Jasmine may be harder than I anticipated. Now, the first Magnemite isn't an issue, because he is going to try to paralyze me, so free shot. Not sure why Primeape didn't have a Cherry Berry though. That's kinda weird. The second Magnemite uses 2 Thunderbolts to defeat my monkey. Poliwrath also doesn't have a Cherry Berry. What was I thinking here? But with a lucky Hypnosis, he gets to use Focus Punch. Now Steelix doesn't need a punch, because Surf is more than enough since he has a Mystic Water. I guess that's what I was thinking, but it was a poor choice. When I get Jasmine's Pokemon out of the box, Steelix does not want to walk with me. I forgot that some Pokemon are just too big to hang out in the Poké Center. Makes sense, I guess. Steelix is a freaking giant. though you wouldn't know it based on these sprites. Anyway, since I already did the Team Rocket stuff here, I returned to Mahogany Town to defeat Bryce. A Choice Specs boosted Thunderbolt one-shots his Seal, baiting out Piloswine. Even though Steelix is weak to Mud Bomb, she should be okay. Unless it crits, bringing her down to 2 HP. Great. But she makes up for it in a big way, by avoiding Blizzard and hitting with an Iron Tail with her own crit, no less. Magnemite then comes back out to Thunderbolt the Dugong one last time. Price's team is another one that makes no sense to me. I mean, Piloswine is fine, he's a Johto Pokemon, but what about having a Delibird? Or even better, Sneasel? Instead, he has both Seal and Dugong, only one of which is even an Ice type. That's lame. With my newfound team, we infiltrate Team Rocket for 5 whole seconds before Boy blows our cover. Thanks, man. I defeat Petrel with some difficulty, but it all worked out in the end. Not so with Boy, who defeats me while on his very last Pokemon. Dang it, that was rough. On my second attempt, the same thing happens, and Haunter just proves too difficult to get past. On my third attempt, Haunter decides to use Curse instead of Shadow Ball, which was an absolutely stupid move on his part. That poor choice lets Piloswine survive a Shadow Ball with 5 whole HP, hitting with an Ice Fang for the knockout. Ariana goes down first try, but Archer is more difficult. Mostly because neither of my water Pokemon have any water moves. So he ends up defeating me, but only a single time, because on the next attempt, a Fire Fang misses at the absolutely perfect moment. It was still pretty close, but I did win. Now, if you thought those fights were bad, just wait till we get to Claire. Once again, I naively thought that the Ice-type gym would be able to easily defeat the Dragon one. I was sadly mistaken, because these Ice Pokemon really suck. The first issue is Claire's Gyarados, because Dugong's Aurora Beam is not great, but it's the only option I really have. Thankfully, Gyarados' go-to move is a Dragon Rage, so after exactly 3 of them, Dugong can rest and get fully healed. At which point, it becomes a guessing game what Sleep Talk will end up becoming. Not a great strat, but it's the best I've got. Thankfully, Dragon Rage can't crit, so there's no real risk here. Eventually, Gyarados runs out of Dragon Rage and starts to Twister, so Dugong can stay awake and use Aurora Beam. Anticipating Dragonair's Thunder Wave, Piloswine comes out to avoid it, tanks a Fire Blast thanks to an Oka Berry which decreases its damage, and responds with a one-shot Ice Fang. For Kingdra, I swap to Seal on a Hydro Pump. She is obviously not going to survive very long, but it's just long enough to lower Kingdra's speed with Icy Wind. That was a necessary sacrifice because now Dugong can outspeed. After a few hits, it's right back to rest and Sleep Talk. Though this time Claire has probably run out of her healing items, so it's a lot faster. Granted, I also get lucky with a crit, so that was nice. For her last Dragonair, Dugong uses a priority Ice Shard for some chip, which also crits, and is apparently a one-shot. Okay, I'll take that victory, and your Pokemon too, Claire, after I get the badge by answering the easiest questionnaire ever. Obviously with these dragons, I'm not going to lose because they resist basically everything. Unfortunately, I forgot about how awesome the evolutions are, and I did not adequately prepare for this gauntlet. Oh well. I plan better next time and end up winning the Clear Bell, allowing me to see this legendary Pokemon who no gym leader has ever used. So let's kill it. I then head over to Kanto, a brand new land that I can't explore because I forgot my passport. But I can get to Victory Road, where Boy finds me one last time. But unlike our last battle, this time I actually have some semi-decent Pokemon. When Boy realizes that, he tries to swap out and save Sneasel, but Magneton is easily defeated with the Dragonair who knows Fire Blast. Sneasel is then also defeated. I sack this dragon and Gyarados too on Feraligatr to deal some damage. This lets a Choice Specs Kingdra Dragon Pulse him, Haunter, and Kadabra too. I decide to give that other Dragonair some showtime to Dragon Pulse the Golbat at the end. This is how the rival fights were supposed to go. I need to win, not him. And when I actually have decent Pokemon, it's not that hard. There's really nothing else to do right now except go to defeat the Elite Four. Gyarados has a Muscle Band to boost his attack a bit and bites the Xatu, who, in turn, bites Gyarados, though it's obviously weaker. After one bite and a Psychic from Jinx, I swap to Dragonair on a heal. She promptly falls asleep, Shed skins it at the end of the turn, is frozen, thaws from that, only for Fire Blast to not really even come close to a KO. I sacrifice her for the second Dragonair, who then uses Dragon Pulse. She is sacked on Executor, so Gyarados can bite, but he also falls. Kingdra finishes off that tree, and thanks to Amnesia, Slowbro takes a couple of turns. Last is the other Xatu, who almost actually wins thanks to a Confuse Ray, but we make it out alive. I'm hoping to get through the Elite Four here without a single loss. Thanks to PK Hex, I can change all of my Pokemon on the fly, so I put Claire's Pokemon into the box and take Will's Psychic Pokemon, even though his team is incomplete without an Espeon. Jinx is still pretty cool though. With a Choice Specs, Jinx Psychics Ariados and Muck in a single hit each. To avoid getting exploded on, Xatu comes out to confuse Forretress and then is eventually blown up. That's fine, I have 2 of those darn birds anyway. Slowbro comes out to Psychic Crobat a few times, and after getting a low roll hit on Venomoth, allowing Koga to heal, he finishes the battle with 1 more Psychic. That was pretty easy. For Bruno, Forretress sets up some Toxic Spikes as Hitmontop digs. He protects against that and slowly uses Swift to whittle away at Hitmon's health. When he's low enough, I pivot to Crobat on a dig turn and respond with Wing Attack. Onix fails to hit Forretress with a Rock Slide, and it's time to stall just a bit and continue hitting with a Swift. Once Onix is low enough, I explode, taking the Rock Snake with me. Muck is swaggered by Hitmonlee, and even with the Black Sludge I let him hold, he does absolutely nothing. That was a major disappointment. At least that stalling let Crobat win with a Wing Attack. Hitmonchan survives the hit, Thunder Punches, and heals, but 2 more hits takes it out. Crobat sacrifices himself to Wing Attack Machamp, letting a Choice Scarf Venomoth come out to Psychic, and somehow survive a Rock Slide for the win. That was unexpected, but that was actually the second attempt. On the first one, I had a very similar strategy. I got to Bruno's then last Pokemon, but Venomoth was just a tad too slow and got Fire Punch crit. So much for having a perfect Elite Four run. For Karen, I start with Hitmontop's signature move, Triple Kick. Thanks to Technician, it's actually decently strong when it actually hits. He heals Confusion, and eventually it connects a second time to defeat Umbreon. Expecting a Pluck from Murkrow, I counter and am instead whirlwinded away. Hitmonchan uses Thunder Punch, and then I make a foolish play forgetting that Murkrow is going to heal. The end result is a dead Hitmonchan. Onix then comes out to Rock Slide the bird. This baits out Vileplume, but a few Charcoal Blaze kicks from Hitmonlee are more than enough. Gengar then licks him to death. Since this guy has a horrible moveset, I'm not really concerned here. Machamp foresights, cross chops, and then has to resort to Rock Slide thanks to Spite. He is Destiny Bonded, but I actually don't care too much when he dies. Hitmontop barely fails to KO Houndoom and ends up falling. This means it's all up to Onix, who thankfully has a Choice Scarf. 2 Earthquakes later, Houndoom is defeated, and I get to take Karen's Pokemon. For Lance, I'm starting with a strategy that isn't very good, but it's all I've got. First, Gyarados is confused, allowing me to pivot to Vileplume to paralyze him too. I then swap back to Umbreon to try and slowly take him out, but that doesn't end up working, and Umbreon falls, as does my Murkrow. Vileplume eventually does defeat Gyarados with a Petal Dance, but I know it's all over at this point. I try to pivot to Houndoom to Nasty Plot, but even with that boost, it's simply not enough. Charizard takes him out, as well as Gengar too. Last, Vileplume comes back out, is confused, and knocks himself out. Well, that was pretty pathetic. On the next attempt, I lead with Gengar to just bite the bullet and Destiny Bond Gyarados straight out of the gate, because that's basically all this Gengar is good for. Umbreon gets lucky with Confusion and takes out Aerodactyl next, but his strongest Dragonite makes an appearance to Outrage. Choice Scarf Vileplume uses Stun Spore before swapping to Murkrow. He is one-shot by Outrage, bringing out Houndoom. Thanks to some lucky paralysis, he is able to get 2 Nasty Plots, increasing his special attack by 4. I don't want to risk another Nasty Plot here, and it's not even necessary. The rest of Lance's Pokemon fall to a Black Glasses boosted Dark Pulse. And I did it! Using not my own Pokemon, I completed the entire Johto region, including the Elite Four, and I only lost a handful of times. Honestly, this could have been a lot worse. and I'm surprised at how lucky I was and how well some of these fights went. But since the whole point of this run was to use Gym Leader's Pokemon, and in this game, there are 8 more Gym Leaders, I can't really stop the video here now, can I? Let's head back to Kanto to beat all of them too. But this time the rules are a bit different. I can beat the Gym Leaders in any order I want, with the exception of Blue, but I can't change their levels. The idea here is that I'll need to plan the order in advance, and ideally, work my way up towards the highest level leaders. So naturally, I start with Blaine. After all, my dragons and dragon-like Pokemon resist fire moves. Gyarados begins with a Choice Scarf Waterfall to knock out Magcargo, but fails to do the same to Magmar. Aerodactyl then takes him out with an Aerial Ace and a Rock Slide. Even being 10 levels lower, Aerodactyl still outspeeds Rapidash to once again Rock Slide. Of course, being paralyzed by Bounce changes the math a bit here. He miraculously survives an Overheat with 1 HP and finishes the battle with 1 more Rock Slide. Well, that went pretty well. Before this fight, I explored all of Kanto, so now I can just fly to whichever gym I choose next. Let's go with Janine, the lowest level leader. 2 Thunder Punches from Magmar takes out Crobat, and I swap to Magcargo, who is promptly poisoned by Ariados. Overheat takes out that bug. Before falling to the poison, Magcargo makes the ultimate sacrifice to use Sunny Day. Rapidash then Flare Blitzes Janine's last 3 Pokemon, staying somewhat healthy with a Shell Bell. Of course that fight was easy. My Pokemon were like 10 levels higher. Hopefully her team is strong enough for the next battle against Erica. Jumpluff is easily defeated with 2 wing attacks by Crobat. I swap to Weezing on a ridiculously strong Ring Out by Tangela, and he falls to an Ancient Power. I did not see that coming, I'll admit. Ariados is also wrung out, but at least manages to get a Poison Jab in first. A Signal Beam from Venomoth defeats those vines. Victory Bell uses Sunny Day as Crobat comes out. He takes a bit of damage, but Quad resists Grass, so it's not an issue. Venomoth tanks a few 1-turn Solar Beams from Blossom, but Sludge Bomb is a 2-hit KO, defeating Erica. Now that I have Grass Pokemon, I decide to face Misty and her Water types. Jumpluff starts with a Sunny Day, and actually tanks a Golduck Psychic pretty well. She then U-turns, doing basically nothing, to bring out Blossom. Her Chloroform activates, and with a Choice Spec Solar Beam, easily defeats this duck and the Lapras next. Starmie is faster than her, unfortunately, and hits with a strong Ice Beam before falling. Since the sun fades as Quagsire comes out, I could swap to literally any Pokemon with any grass move, but I bring out Tangela. Thanks to Amnesia, Quagsire does survive the first Giga Drain, but not the second. That was also super easy. With my newly obtained water Pokemon, it's time to wreck some rocks. Quagsire is unfortunately slower than Graveler, which I didn't expect. He still wins that exchange, but at this HP, his Rindo Berry does not stop him from falling to Kabutops' Giga Drain. That was unfortunate and ruined all of my plans. Lapras tries to salvage this battle and gets Rock Slide flinched. That too was unfortunate. Alright Starmie, let's bring you out to Confuse Ray. Since Starmie has a Choice Specs, I have to swap to Golduck on an Aqua Jet as the confusion immediately wears off. That was a huge waste. Golduck survives a single Rock Slide and Psychics before falling. I knew that Kabutops was going to be an issue, but this is ridiculous. Starmie comes back out, barely survives Aqua Jet, and a Choice Specs Water Pulse fails to get the KO. I guess I can't really complain because the same thing just happened to Brock. He heals, gets Water Pulsed again, and defeats my Starmie. Lapras is the last surviving Pokemon, but not for long. Alright, that was rough. I just assumed that Misty's water Pokemon would easily sweep, and that Quagsire would be able to Earthquake Kabutops. Neither of those things actually happened, so let's try again. I do want to point out though, that this is the first time we lost in a Kanto gym. Having learned from my mistake, I lead with Starmie, the star. Water Pulse one-shots Graveler, and 2 Water Pulses easily takes out Kabutops. That was much less exciting, but a lot easier. As much as I love Starmie, I want other Pokemon to have a turn too, so I swap to Golduck on a Sandstorm. Onix and Rhyhorn both fall to Water Pulses, and last is Omastar. Golduck does some damage with Psychic and Water Pulse before falling. Lapras comes out, but after a few turns I get tired of this and pivot to Quagsire on an Ancient Power. Eventually, Earthquake hits through Protect, and is actually pretty weak. So much so that Quagsire dies. Well, this Omastar seems like an issue now too. My ace comes back out and finishes the battle with one last water pulse. I should have just swept with him from the beginning, but I wanted to make this more exciting. Only a few more gyms to go, and the next one is going to be Lieutenant Surge, which goes about as well as you would expect. I start with a Choice Specs Graveler, which was pointless because even with that speed boost, he isn't outspeeding anything that Surge has. Not that it's necessary, because he only gets hit a single time, and in spite of double teams, Earthquake never misses. So he blows through Surge's entire team basically without effort. That's how I envisioned the Brock fight going too, it just was a little bit more complicated. At this point, there are only 2 gyms left, but since I have to do blue last, it's time for a Sabrina battle. She may only have 3 Pokemon, but they're all pretty good, and they're decently high levels too. I start with Electabuzz and use Light Screen. Espeon Psychic is still much stronger than my Shockwave, however, so that's unfortunate. We both get paralyzed thanks to that skill swap, and with a Calm Mind, Espeon takes me out. Electrode goes for a Charge Beam boost, but immediately falls. Even Magneton gets Psychic Crit. The second Electrode uses Light Screen to survive a bit longer, which doesn't end up helping that much. Raichu then meets a similar fate. Now losing here didn't really surprise me, but I at least expected to get past that stupid Espeon. Over the next several minutes, I try out a number of different strategies, even sacrificing an Electrode, which still didn't kill Espeon. He then defeats my whole team, except for Magneton. He gets the lucky crit this time, not that it matters, since Mr. Mime finishes off the job. On my next attempt, I do get all the way to her last Pokemon, Alakazam, who then defeats me. But all of these losses only made me that much stronger, and I have a pretty okay strategy now. At least at the start. Electrode begins by screeching Espeon on a skill swap. In the off chance this works, I start using Double Team, but get Psychicked, surviving thanks to a Focus Sash. That is my cue to self-destruct, taking out Espeon. Now Mr. Mime and Electabuzz both Light Screen, and he gets a lucky Psychic, bypassing it altogether. Well, that's great. This means that my strategy is now to hit with Mirror Shot to lower Mr. Mime's accuracy and hope for the best. After a few of those hits, I start to spam Double Team as well. Mr. Mime misses just enough that Magneton wins with a critical Shockwave. Alakazam misses probably 5 times in a row as Magneton whittles away at his HP and lowers his accuracy just a bit. But he can't dodge forever, and eventually Magneton is taken out. Electrode comes out to Thunder Wave and is skill swapped instead of destroyed. This proves to be Sabrina's downfall, as Electrode gets a critical Shockwave for the win. Well, that was certainly the toughest gym battle to date, but that's why I saved her for last, because I will need those awesome Pokemon to defeat Blue. Sorry for calling you stupid a few minutes ago, Espeon. I still love you, even when you solo my whole team with Psychics. But now that he's mine, I lead with him to Choice Spec Shadow Ball Executor. I pivot to Mr. Mime on Rhydon's Megahorn that crits and one-shots. Not a great move there. Alakazam Energy Balls him, and then Psychic fails to one-shot Machamp. That's surprising, and I get Earthquaked. At least the next Psychic is a higher roll, and it works. Arcanine is obviously going to extreme speed here, bringing out Espeon. Arcanine falls in one Psychic, but Gyarados survives and outspeeds thanks to a Dragon Dance. Espeon does win that encounter, but faces off against Pidgeot with only 23 HP. A crit here would be great, but alas, 'twas not to be. And even with a Pokemon as awesome as Espeon, I lose. Not just once, but twice. Okay, I've been nice for long enough, Blue. Now it's time to be cheap. Mr. Mime starts with a Light Screen and takes a Leaf Storm. I pivot to Espeon on a Trick Room and begin using Calm Minds while tanking those Leaf Storms. A crit here would be bad, but he doesn't get one. A few Calm Minds later, the Trick Room finally wears off, and now it's time to roll. Executor is Shadow Balled, and everyone else is Psychicked. Espeon did have a Shell Bell, just to make sure a rogue Arcanine didn't extreme speed and steal my victory, but it wasn't necessary. I tried to win this fair and square, but Blue simply wouldn't let me. So, after our victory, I steal all of his Pokemon. We don't need euphemisms at this point anymore. I'm basically at the end here. Obviously though, I can't get all 16 badges and not go to Mount Silver. First though, I go to the Battle Frontier to pick up a few useful items. I didn't feel the need to do this during any of our gym adventures, but this time, I'm trying something drastic. Basically, how far I can get in this red battle without matching his levels at all. I doubt I can do it, but let's see how it goes. Executor is Iron-tailed, hangs on with a Focus Sash, uses Trick Room, and then falls to Hail just like I planned. This lets a level 60 Machamp come out to outspeed, thanks to Trick Room, and use an Expert Belted Earthquake. Charizard is knocked out with a 4x Stone Edge, and Lapras is Dynamic Punched, but he hits through the confusion and Blizzard takes out Machamp. Rhydon can still benefit from Trick Room and uses a Stone Edge for the knockout. I then sacrifice him on Venusaur to bring out Arcanine. He survives Sludge Bomb, and even with a Choice Banded Flare Blitz, doesn't do nearly enough, but he knocks himself out. Pidgeot is outsped, falls asleep, and is also Sludge Bombed. Last is my Gyarados, whose Ice Fang is quite weak, so I lost. That's too bad, because I really liked that Trick Room strat too. A few attempts later, Lapras hits himself in confusion, letting Machamp actually take him out. This brings out Blastoise. Between a Dynamic Punch, Confusion, and Thunder Punch, Machamp almost wins, but the hail damage was just too much. Blastoise then blizzards both Gyarados and Pidgeot. Arcanine does take him out with an extreme speed, but promptly falls to Snorlax. Rhydon is then blizzard and does not make it. Okay, at this point, I feel like it might actually be possible to do this nearly 30 levels too low, but it would require a ton of luck, or a much better player. Since I don't have either of those apparently, I'll just do this the normal way. Brute force with Pokemon of the same level. It's crazy how much less Iron-tail does now that Executor is 30 levels higher. Who would have guessed? And Psychic one-shots that Pika. I swap to Rhydon on Charizard to take a few hits, responding with Stone Edge. He has a Choice Scarf to outspeed the Lapras with another Stone Edge before falling. In spite of a full restore, Executor's Leaf Storm one-shots Lapras. Arcanine's Flare Blitz now easily one-shots Venusaur. For Blastoise, I pivot to Gyarados to Dragon Dance a single time and use a couple of returns. Red's last Pokemon, Snorlax, defeats Gyarados after a waterfall, allowing Machamp to come out at the very end. One last Dynamic Punch from a no-guard Machamp finishes off the last battle of the run. So with that, we have done it. It is in fact possible to beat every gym leader in Pokémon Heart Gold using the previous gym leader's Pokémon. And here are all of the Pokemon I've stolen throughout this entire game. I've had this idea in the back of my mind for a while, but in a lot of Pokemon games, it would be quite difficult to even get past the second gym leader this way. So Johto, with their 16 gym leaders, was certainly the way to go. I don't know if this will become a series or not, but either way, I enjoyed doing it, and it was a cool, unique way to play Pokemon. Regardless, I hope to see you in the next region.